If you make any commands, I will come to them after the explanation. You guys are evil. All right. So this is the Nemesis breakdown, the update pre-Clockwork City, and then obviously I'm anticipating changes, and that's why it's changing the way it is. So, big change number one, Lightning Staff. I'm throwing a Lightning Staff basically in all of my DPS builds because sustain-wise, it adds great DPS, number one, for the heavy attack. Off balance is a thing, so adding more lightning to the situation, particularly if you're playing with Sorks or any other form of lightning, adds more damage for you with my CP loadout, as is other people, including every kind of stem DPS there is. But again, where it was before was using dual-wield Torx pack swords in the front bar, back bar with a Nirnhone VMA Fire Staff. Now Fire Staves for me are somewhat shifted. I don't feel the same way about them going into this next update. I know for a lot of people they're the end-all be-all, but for me, I emphasize Maelstrom Lightning Staves over the Fire Staves based on the kind of content I run. That said, let's break it down. So base stats, 45k max magicka, 17k health, and we're back. This is using Bystat food with a simple 5-1-1 arrangement, all magicka enchants on everything. Spell damage unbuffed, a little over 2600. And the spell crit, just under 62%. Again, not everything is gold. That could easily, with all divines, go above 62%. Now, a disclaimer. That's with a VMA Nirnhone Fire Staff on the front bar as your main Fire Staff weave bar. The problem is that the 189 spell damage is going away. So this is going to get lower post Clockwork City. So you have to keep that in mind. I am still going to be going with Nirnhone on the front bar. I'm thinking Sharpened actually on the back, but we'll get into that in a second. But again, this kind of gives you an idea where it's going to be. Subtract 189 from the spell damage unbuffed. Buffed, it gets going to be around 3k, maybe a little bit over. So beyond that, getting into the actual gear, I've opted, whereas before we were using Willpower, Spinner, and then monster sets with Torx Pact and VMA, I'm now scrapping all semblance of a monster set. There's not a monster set on this. I'm running 5-piece Julianos and 5-piece Spinner. So Spinner, for those that don't know, max magicka, spell damage, spell penetration. The math on this is with, after the update, with a tank running some form of breach or someone running elemental drain, we're going to be 500 off, zeroing out the resistances of 99% of the enemies in all 4-man content. So penetration wise, you're going to be feeling really good after the next update. I just said that. Anyway, Spinner though, max spell damage, penetration. Again, I'm running that on the Jeweler with spell damage enchants, and then finally Julianos, which is again spell damage max, spell crit max, spell crit, and then spell damage. So 5-5. It's running a 5-5-1 because you can craft the Julianos whatever weights you want. Ideally, it'd be heavy chest and either medium head or legs. And again, because you're not using a monster set, it's just kind of based on what you want to do. On the back bar, I'm using, well, this is, I have these reversed. But again, your weave bar is the Inferno Staff. Nirnhone, it doesn't have to be a VMA staff because I'm not using it to proc Wall of Elements after the update. I'm just using a VMA. I'm just using it because I have it and I know where else to put it right now. But again, Nirnhone on the front bar, fire. Again, enchant wise, I'm going to be kind of testing that after the update post Clockwork City. Maybe lightning, maybe spell damage, maybe fire. It just depends on how it shakes out. But again, Fire Staff Nirnhone on the back bar. For lightning, this is where I do want a VMA stave. I'm using it to proc that Crushing Wall enchantment, which will be a one-item set bonus after the update. Again, Blockade of Storms can proc off balance, more lightning for concussion, etc. Again, right now I'm running Sharpened. I think I may change this to Precise because, again, without Sharpened on the bar, we're going to be at just under 500 after the next update with the CP allocation, 500 off the max resistances reduction you can get with a tank in the group. So it's a really good place to be as far as penetration. I just have Sharpened here because this is what I got, and I haven't retraded any of the staves because, again, we're pre-Clockwork City. So gives you an idea. Maelstrom Lightning, you're seeing kind of a theme here with a lot of my Magicka DPS setups. Nirnhone Fire Staff in the front since I'm using it to actually weave and do damage and things for scaling off that max spell damage. And then finally we have 5 Julianos and 5 Spinner. Now, getting into the bars real quick. Front bar where we have our fire, we've got Impale, that is the Magicka Nightblade's OP ranged execute. It's once they hit 25%, you're doing 300% more damage, and it doesn't get scale as you get lower, like the beam is on a Templar. It's just as soon as you hit 25, you can start spamming this and doing a lot of damage. Sometimes you can weave a light attack and then hit your impale, light attack, impale to get a little bit more damage, because there's a little bit of a gap on the animation how long it takes, but that comes down to your preference and how you feel comfortable. Onto this, we have Inner Light, because again, that's giving us more crit, max magicka, and with the Mage's Guild passives providing not just 5%, but 7% for having it on the bar. I've gone here with my main spammable being Funnel Health. Funnel Health is one of the morphs of Strife. The other morph is for more damage, but with no off heal for you and someone else. So with this, these are typically critting between 16 to 19k, providing a heal for myself and one other of a hot of 26% damage done. So let's say on the 19 we'll round up to 20. That's like what, a 5k, 4 to 5k hot over 10 seconds for me and another person on my weave. It's not a bad thing. It's not going to keep you alive through everything, but it's just added survivability with what you do. You could easily go with the other morph and have a lot of fun. We have Crippling Grasp. This is a single target, massive dot that the Nightblade has. Definitely very, very fun to use. Again, you can see just what it is over 8 seconds. It's just ridiculous. So having there on the bar is a lot of fun there. You also gain Major Expedition, increasing your movement speed by 30%. So you can only have one of these active at a time, but on a boss in particular, this just adds a lot of DPS. There, finally, we have our front bar AoE, which is Twisting Path. Twisting Path, massive. This originally was a dot, and it was a damage over time and direct damage attack. Got finally changed to what it actually is, which is a damage over time ability. But it's a big AoE. It lasts for nearly 12 seconds. Provides Major Expedition, and while you're on it, and then when you leave it after 2 seconds. A lot of fun to use, and again, you're keeping this down with in combination with Elemental Blockade, or Blockade of Storms, rather. So here on the front bar, you'll notice we have Fiery Rage, and you're going, why do you not have Meteor on the front bar to max out that max magicka? The reason is, this is my Destro Staff ability with a Fire Stave that allows me to get the passive for single target abilities, doing more damage. So if you have a Fire Staff but no Destruction Staff ability on your bar, since I'm using Funnel Health as my spammable, that means you're not getting that 8% damage done to the single target ability. So you'll notice single target, single target, single target. My Execute, my spammable, and Crippling Grasp are all single target abilities. So that 8% buff is much greater. It's benefiting those abilities more to have Fiery Rage here rather than to put Meteor here to buff that max magic and have just a higher stats, which again scale in a different way. So again, Fiery Rage here on the front bar, so we're using the Fire Staff for their Destro Staff ability. We go to the back bar with the Lightning Staff. We've got Merciless Resolve, which again we're proccing for Minor Berserk, and then using in our weave and our rotation, and then proc the Spectral Bow. Very strong ability. It's the reason why you won't see a 2-piece Slime Craw on a lot of Nightblades, because they have natural access to Minor Berserk. So yeah, we're going to be keeping that up. We have Inner Light double barred here because we're doing damage here on this bar. We're actually going to be settling in for moments at a time to shield up to do damage, spamming with Sap Essence or Meteor. So having this here, keeping that max magicka up is a good thing. We have Harness Magicka. Again, we have a shield, so shit goes wrong or you need to, you're here in combination with Sap Essence here on the L1, which is your major sorcery source. So you're using it to get your major sorcery. Also having a I believe it is a siphoning ability on this bar. Keeping this actually slotted here versus using pots is giving you that 8% max magicka from the passive on the siphoning line. So it's good to have it here, or at least have another siphoning ability here if you're using spell power pots, but this is how you're getting your major sorcery. And then we have Blockade of Storms again in combination with the Maelstrom Lightning Staff, allowing us to get off balance, concussion, and then again, heavy attacks with a Lightning Staff being so much more satisfying and DPS worthy than a Fire Staff. So we've added, again, one of the big changes with Nemesis with adding a Lightning Staff, and at that, a Maelstrom Lightning Staff, and emphasizing that over trying to emphasize a Fire Staff. Finally, we have our Meteor here on the back bar. We want to make sure to have it because, again, it's a great single target ultimate, does a lot of damage, hits in the AoE, ticks when they're sitting inside it. In addition to that, it's also providing an extra 2% max magic. So our max magic is actually higher on our back bar, which is kind of interesting. So this is actually scaling really well with these abilities. So because we have a lightning staff on our back bar and we have meteor on our back bar, it means our max magic is higher. The lightning staff is affecting, since we have a Destro staff ability with Blockade of Storms, is there on that bar. That means we're getting 8% more damage done on AoEs, meaning that Blockade of Storms and Sap Essence are doing more damage. And because then we have more Magicka when we do our heavy attacks, we're actually getting more Magicka back. It's negligible, but it's nice to think about. When you have your meteor on that bar, your max magic is slightly higher, therefore you're getting more on the max, 5% of max for every fully charged heavy attack. So, yeah. And the nice thing is, too, you can proc the Shooting Star on one bar, switch bars, have it land, and actually get the benefit of the passives on the other. So if you don't want to stay here, proc the meteor, and then switch, you have that choice. So that breaks down the skill set of this. Now, going into the CP, remarkably similar, if not identical, to every Magicka DPS tune I've been using. I have my own meta. It's what I'm using. It's what's worked for me. Definitely use it, test it, see if it works for you. But going into this, breaking it down, again, 51 into Elfborn, 56 into Elemental Expert, 38 into Erosion. Again, after Clockwork City drops, I'm slotting all 10 points directly into Erosion to get that calculation I had, where we're only 500 off cap without Sharpen with a tank. So definitely keep that in mind. But again, jump points be damned. I'm not worried. I don't believe in never trust the tooltip, number one. Number two, I believe in the server-side calculations. So getting into then 75 into Thaumaturge, which again, routinely done for the Exploiter passive, because not only are you getting, is this Thaumaturge going to affect Fiery Rage, it's going to affect, what is it? Losing it right now. Blockade of Storms and Twisting Path, but it's also allowing us, again, with that Lightning Staff with the Blockade of Storms to proc off balance. It gives us our own natural source of this extra 10 damage, which when it hits, you know, we're already as a Nightblade getting 10% more crit damage. So when this hits on top of it, it's additive, not multiplicative, but it's still very, very strong. So yeah, keeping this, my personal thing, 51, 56, 38 to be 48, and then to 75. Into the red tree again. 49 to Hardy, 49 to Elemental Defender first for mitigation, then you slot in the 61 into Thick Skinned, and then in the Steed, the 61 into Ironclad. Then I've got nothing in the Lord. Over to the green tree, we're into the Lover, giving love to Arcanist, 75 into Arcanist, again for your magical recovery, 75 into Tenacity for those heavy attacks, because again, your lightning heavies are going to be doing damage, and you're going to get more Magicka back because of it, slotting points into there. For the last 70, 56 into Tumbling, 14 to Shadow Ward. I want to cheapen the cost of having to get out of AoEs or dodging a block rather than slotting points in to block things. I don't want to be blocking things on a Magicka tune. Finally, the last thing to touch on with Nemesis is that it is a vampire. Now, again, the vampire passives are useful because of undeath, because of the added recovery, etc. But it's not necessary. It's not necessary on this build. I do it because of a little bit because of roleplay, a little bit because I find myself liking undeath on characters that do damage and get health back. Meaning, if I'm hard, the lower your health gets, the more the mitigation kicks in. Meaning that if I have some natural way to get my health up and struggle through and be tanky in that lower health total, I'm okay with being a vampire. So you'll see me with a Templar and a Nightblade being a vampire typically on my builds. If I move into like a Sork, where I'm typically hovering at a higher total and I don't need more fire damage pushing me into that because of the natural crit heal I usually run with Power Surge or Crit Surge, you won't see me being a vampire. So final thing, Nemesis is indeed a vampire, but again, not necessary, just a choice among many. Hopefully that helps you out, and again, this has been the Nemesis Breakdown. Back to live! Alright, how's everybody doing? Woo! Lot of...
Making potions.